Regardless, though, Izuku ends up making his way towards
Hey
his home,
guys, sorry
realizing that he's a
about
bit
last
late,
time
seeing as he was
ending
actually going to be
short.
going
I'm
out for
just
dinner with his
gonna
family, and his father just got back
advance.
from overseas where he works at. Izuku would take a
Yeah,
different
this
path
is the way
home,
to do it.
eventually realizing that something is
Sure.
coming after him very, very rapidly. The Rinnegan being able to see in different directions and having access to, everything that's around him, and seeing as he can't deactivate it, Izuku seeing the sludge villain rush at him at top speeds and saying, "Give me your body, kid," would come at him, but Izuku would not be playing no games and would straight use the diva path to push the sludge villain straight into a wall, leaving it to splatter all over it. And ultimately, Izuku would walk his way towards it, saying that he's tired of having things get in his way today. He just wants to make it home and have some damn Alfredo pasta. And, the sludge villain is not letting him. So now, Izuku looks towards the direction of the sludge villain and says to get lost. Before then, a huge man would come out of the sewers, and it would be shown that it's All Might, laughing in his casual mannerism, before he then sees that Izuku had just taken care of the sludge villain. He would walk over, being completely impressed by what had happened, and the first thing that Izuku would notice about All Might would be his left side. It would almost look like he has this terrible injury. Izuku could see past the costume. So after they end up putting the sludge villain in a bottle, courtesy of Izuku, then they would end up actually having a conversation. And Izuku would say, "All Might, before you go, I know you already autographed this, but I just have one more question. What's that injury on your left side?" All Might would be shocked at the fact that this kid realized it, and then ultimately his time limit would run out, leading All Might to de-transform, and Izuku would realize instantly what that is. He'd realize that he wasn't tripping and that All Might truly has gotten weaker. It has to be that injury, he would think. Immediately, Izuku would ask All Might why he hasn't just treated it, and All Might would tell him that he's been to every doctor in the world. There's no way to fix it. Ever since it happened, he's had his hero life, his hero activity cut in half. And Izuku says, "Yeah, I've noticed it. Ever since your fight with Chainsaw Man." And All Might would say, "Nah, the bastard's tough, but not that tough. I beat him." And then Izuku would say, "So then, what's the issue?" And All Might would just be like, "Well, kid, my entire respiratory system's messed up. I can't keep up with my quirk. So, yeah, now that you know, I'm gonna need to ask you to keep it a secret." And Izuku would say, "Why would I keep a secret if I could just fix you?" All Might would be like, "What are you talking about, kid?" And Izuku would use the Naraka path, bringing out the King of Hell, as he would tell All Might to trust him, that he has a powerful quirk that could heal All Might, and all he has to do is step into the mouth of the King of Hell. All Might would look at Izuku with confusion in his face, and Izuku would look at him with just this trustworthy look, telling him, trust him, like he's a huge fan. He would never do anything to hurt the symbol of peace. I mean, he just defeated a villain, for crying out loud. Izuku then says that he's trustworthy and that he could prove it to him, going on to then say that it's harmless. If he steps in, he'll simply be healed of all of his injuries, and this could even bring somebody back from the dead. All Might goes inside begrudgingly, and once he exits, he tries to de-transform, but it doesn't work. All Might is 100% back to his prime form, and now he just looks at an Izuku who would be there looking at him with a smile on his face, and All Might is just like, "Kid, you healed me. How do I ever thank you?" And Izuku would be like, "I don't know, but if you want, you could tag along for dinner tonight." And All Might would say, "I'll be there, young man," before then jumping off and going to put on a suit. Izuku making it home and being like, "Guys, you'll never guess who I met." And Inko would be like, "You better have a good excuse, Izuku," as he would show her a picture of him and All Might taking a selfie together, and, All Might saying he's gonna come to dinner, with Inko passing out instantly, and Asashi being like, "Did you just say All Might's coming home for dinner?" Or not home for dinner, but going out to dinner with us? And Izuku would be like, "Yeah, so put on a pretty good outfit." They would all do so, and they would meet All Might there at the dinner table. All Might would arrive, and he would end up pretty much bought out the place. Like, he's so grateful to Izuku that he just wants them to have the perfect dinner. And, it would be so smooth. All Might would laugh, they'd have jokes, he'd talk about his hero career, we tell Izuku how proud he is and how he healed him and all that stuff, and All Might would just non-stop be thanking them for giving birth to such an amazing kid, saying that he hopes to see him in UA, and Izuku would say he's actually signed up there. All Might saying that's perfect because he's actually going to work there very soon. And Izuku would laugh saying he's kidding, but All Might would say he's not. Originally he was looking for a successor, but now that he can keep going, he can probably hold off on that for a little longer. Izuku would laugh and say he sure can, and ultimately afterwards, they would end off the night on amazing terms, and Izuku would spend the next 10 months just hanging out with All Might like they were just basic friends, having sparring sessions in which All Might realizes, hey, this kid is kind of stronger than me. That's kind of crazy, huh? But no, yeah, it would be very, very quickly shown to All Might that Izuku is very much so in a league way, way, way above what All Might could have ever expected, and Izuku isn't scared of showing that. Like, he shows it, and he is proud of the fact that he is more powerful than the symbol of peace. All Might's happy, and he knows that he won't even need to pick a successor at this point. This kid might be able to end the whole thing with one for all and all for one. The power that this kid has, he has no doubt that he could probably defeat All for One someday. So he would tell Izuku about it, and Izuku would say that that's definitely in the realm of possibility, but for now, let's just enjoy the evening. And All Might would say, honestly, kid, let's do it. Couldn't agree with you anymore. And Izuku would laugh before looking towards All Might and saying, this is why you're my favorite hero. And then what pretty much ends up going down is that, they chill. Eventually, All Might drops Izuku off home with the supercar. And then eventually Izuku goes on to take the written exam. And then going outside and taking the recommendation exam because he was not about to go and face off against some robots or stuff like that. So pretty much what ends up happening is when the 0-pointer would be about to stomp on Uraraka, seeing as that stuff would still happen, Nezu uses his remote control and just turns off the robot before it could stomp Uraraka. Eventually, Recovery Girl arrives, saving her, and then ultimately she would be saved, with Izuku not meeting Uraraka quite yet, and Bakugo noticing that Izuku wasn't even in his testing area. The nerd must have got scared from his last encounter and realized that some dumb illusions aren't going to be getting him anywhere in life. But little does he know that Izuku is just one step ahead of him this entire time. And so, Izuku and Bakugo would be kind of like on weird terms, if I do put it lightly. But regardless of that, what pretty much goes on to happen is that Izuku would find himself inside of Nezu's office after the entire recommendation exam would happen, and All Might would actually recommend Izuku for an entire scholarship, saying that Izuku is already far more powerful than he is, and Nezu would have a conversation with Izuku asking about his powers. Izuku explaining all of his abilities and saying that they might seem a little villainish, so, do take heed. Nezu would say not to worry, that there is no thing as a villainous quirk. That is just society doing its thing, and that he understands that society is a very cruel thing. But Izuku ultimately sighs before saying, well, it consists of a couple. I have the Naraka path, which allows me to summon the King of Hell, and what it pretty much can do is heal people, and I could also use it to interrogate people. If they lie, well, let's just say their subscription to life is cut short. I have the abilities of the Preda path, which can pretty much absorb attacks like energy beams and things of that nature, like fire and stuff, and wind and ice. I can do that. I also have the Animal path, which allows me to summon insanely powerful creatures, the likes of the levels of even All Might himself. And then I also have the ability of the Asura path, which allows me to summon weapons out of my body at will, as well as the Diva path, which allows me to control repulsive and like pushing in forces. He then goes on to explain that he also has the human path, and that pretty much has the abilities of pulling souls out. And he also has the ability of something else that he's been working on, a little dragon that can just zoom by and just kill everybody by sucking their souls out. Not to mention he also has the abilities of teleporting with objects that he can see, and seeing as his distance of vision is very, very, very far, seeing as he has the Rinnegan, it's really, really easy for Izuku to do those things. So after hearing all of this, Nezu would be extremely shocked and say that Izuku's abilities definitely are something worthy of noting. And then Izuku would say that, he can also put people under very, very, very powerful illusions, and he also has the abilities of being able to stick onto walls and walk on surfaces, that the only downside of his quirk is that it absorbs his energy, his life force, so he can't go too crazy or else he'll die himself, But ultimately, he says he has a lot of it, seeing as he's been training on that his whole life, so it's not something that worries him too much. But it used to be a very, very big downside where he could barely use one ability at a time, but now Izuku could use them all at different times, and his speed and combat abilities alongside with all of the powers that he possesses would make him a very, very feared foe. His oh my god, I was about to say the Andrew Tate quote. I don't know if you guys have heard it, but it's like, my sheer indefatigability makes me a feared opponent in all realms of combat, the endeavor and all that stuff. I was gonna say that, just a little corny joke in there, but ultimately Izuku would do so, and the exam would pretty much be over, leading towards Izuku making his way towards the UA classroom 2 days later, looking up and seeing a billboard that just says fandom. Izuku being like, what's fandom?
As anime fans, we love to show our support to our favorite shows by rocking anime apparel. But something I'm pretty sure we can all agree on is it's so expensive. So I've partnered up with Fandom to bring you all affordable, high-quality anime merch that you are sure to love. And if you use my code Zether at checkout, you can even get an extra 10% off the already affordable merch. Keep in mind, it does come from overseas sellers, so its sizing is going to be different since it's overseas. That said, let's get back into the video.
Izuku seeing this, he's like, might have to check it out. But ultimately, Izuku makes his way towards the classroom, and it would be here that Izuku would be greeted to possibly the worst thing that he could have seen on this day. It was such a good day for him when suddenly he sees Katsuki Bakugo. And Bakugo seeing Izuku would be like, huh? How are you here? Did you cheat or something? You must have hacked the system to get in, you quirkless not quirkless nerd, but you useless nerd. And Deku would look at Bakugo saying, yeah, nice to see you too, Bakugo. Looks like we're going to be sharing a classroom, so hopefully you leave me alone. And Bakugo would say, you wish, Deku. I'm going to make sure that these next couple of years of our life are a living hell for you. Suddenly, a man inside of a yellow beanbag thing would step out, and he would say, make sure that you do that, because the second that you start, I'll expel you without a second thought. I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa. Put these on and meet me outside. And by the way, problem child, you have another one of those little outbursts, and I promise you I'll get rid of your quirk, and I'll make sure you can never attend another hero school in your life again. As he would then look towards Izuku and say, to make sure that he doesn't have any other encounters with this kid at all. And Izuku would nod, before then following Aizawa's instructions, and Uraraka would be like, but what about orientation? And Aizawa would say, we don't need orientation. We have 3 years to get you guys ready for the real world.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
And that's not enough time. So follow me, put these on, and do as I say. Follow that kid over there. He knows what's up. Everybody looks towards Izuku, and once they would make their way towards the changing rooms, Kirishima would notice that Izuku is absolutely ripped. Kirishima would be like, whoa man, you be lifting or what? And Izuku would say, yeah, kind of. I got into it a while back when I realized that my quirk needed a lot more stamina, so calisthenics and weightlifting have definitely been on my plate, as well as a bunch of cardio. And Kirishima would say, I'd love to work out with you someday, man. Before, Izuku says, yeah, definitely. And then Mineta would question Izuku in his eyes, saying they look weird, but there's some sort of mystery behind them that just makes them look awesome. They look like almost imposing. He kind of feels a bit of fear looking into them. And Izuku would be like, oh, sorry about that. But Kirishima would say that that's manly. And so they would find themselves outside right next to Aizawa, as Aizawa would look at all of them and be like, alright, here. Tossing the ball towards Bakugo, who would throw the ball and get 700 meters. Eventually, Aizawa would show everybody the score, and then when everybody would begin to get excited, he'd be like, oh, you're excited? Well, how's about this? Whoever comes in last place is expelled. Immediately after this, everybody would freak out, and Aizawa would then reach into a bucket of baseballs before he then grabs one and tosses it towards the direction of Izuku. He would go towards the circle, and then suddenly Aizawa would tell him not to hold back on him, to throw it as far as he possibly can, and to make sure he doesn't get last place. Izuku would hold on to this ball before asking Aizawa if he's positive he has to go all out, saying that he might hurt a couple of his classmates if he does so, and Aizawa would say that he'll be fine, and that he'd better go all out. Before Izuku holds onto this ball, and immediately using the Diva Path, would use the most busted ability that he could have possibly used on this thing, and he pretty much would go on to toss the ball up into the air, right? And then he just uses his pushing ability to just boom, like send that thing flying. Aizawa would read the charts and it would read infinity, and Izuku would be told that he did great. Now, all I'm going to say is that when Izuku used this ability, not only did Izuku push the ball forward, but Izuku pushed everyone forward. Everyone and the ball got pushed forward, and Izuku was just like looking at them as he would apologize to them, and then they would take the rest of the couple of other exams that were left. Izuku, following all of this, he would end up being ranked number 1 in the quirk apprehension test, and Mineta would be the one that would actually get expelled because he comes in absolute last place. Now, you guys are probably like, damn, Mineta's gone, and honestly, bro, same. So I just changed my mind. I don't want to get rid of Mineta. I love Mineta. So instead, we're going to get rid of Hagakure because she literally never does anything. So yeah, we'll get rid of her. It's not like we even need her to the story. So we're going to get rid of her and keep Mineta in because, you know, he's comic relief. But following this, Izuku would pretty much just make his way home. And once there, Izuku would get a text from All Might telling him that he did a great job. Telling Izuku that he can't wait to teach him in a couple of days. And Izuku would walk into his classroom 2 days later when he sees All Might bust through the door, and All Might has his usual bravado on, all the people in the classroom just going absolutely nuts to butts over All Might's presence. But Izuku, seeing as he already knows All Might, he's been with him, you know, he's already had dinner and stuff with him, he doesn't freak out as much as everybody else does. But there is still that hint of respect and adoration towards All Might that is, you know, obviously you would have for the number 1 hero, right? But pretty much what ends up happening following this is that they would all be told about the fact that they're going to be taking hero versus villain training exercises. They're going to be doing 2v2 battles where they have to save a bomb and all that stuff, right? Okay. And following this, All Might tosses a little piece of pen and paper to everybody, and all of them would write their names down on it, as well as a random number that they would think of, right? Everybody who would write the same numbers would be paired up, and the option of the numbers would be, actually, no, I'm just gonna say it's random. I don't know why I was like making this so much more complicated on myself than I had to be, but yeah, it's random. And eventually, the team selection would essentially equate to Izuku and Mineta versus Bakugo and Ida. Why Mineta? Because I don't want the ship to be Araraka, and I just don't even want to focus on a ship. So yeah, we're not focusing on that, and instead we're just going to be saying that it's Izuku and Mineta versus Bakugo and Ida. Okay, so we all know that Bakugo doesn't really like Izuku, and he's already gotten beat down by Izuku, you know, once. Izuku also showed that he definitely does have the power to back it up, and that his abilities aren't some illusion in the quirk apprehension test. So Bakugo is on the fences whether he should attack or not attack Izuku, but all he knows is that he wants to get him back for everything. And Izuku thinks that if the eyes is what Izuku has, it has that gives him access to his power, then maybe he'll just smoke up the room so much he can't use his eyes. So that's Bakugo's strategy. And so Bakugo charges at Deku, screaming his name, Izuku telling Mineta to hide, and he would do so easily, cowering in fear and running away like an absolute Chad. But Izuku stays back and looking towards Bakugo. He would tell him if he really wants to do this right now. And Bakugo says, I'm gonna do this and more, Deku. You're mine. And as long as those people can't, and as long as these cameras are off, they won't know what happens. So, you know, Bakugo then looks towards the direction of Izuku and shoots a very powerful explosion at him with his right hand. Izuku would use the Diva Path to push Bakugo back and the explosion as well, and Bakugo would get sent flying towards the wall. Bakugo then would try to cause so much smoke to go up into the air so that Deku can't see, and Deku knows that this is exactly what he's doing. However, Deku doesn't care. Deku wants Bakugo to do this, and he could not be any happier at the fact that Bakugo's trying to use this strategy. Izuku lets it happen. The smoke would fill up the entire room, and then eventually Bakugo says, "You can't see no more. Say bye-bye to your quirk, loser," coming in with a powerful explosion by using his gauntlets. And when that happens, Izuku sucks up the explosion of the gauntlets and would tell Bakugo that that was a good try, but he can still see everything, using his push ability to push the smoke away, and then grabbing Bakugo by the throat, summoning the King of Hell, and tossing him in there, where the King of Hell and Izuku would be inside, and Izuku would tell Bakugo one thing. He would ask him one thing: "Why are you such a jerk?" And then he would tell Bakugo, by the way, you lie, you die. Showing him a genjutsu of exactly what would happen if Bakugo truly did lie. And Bakugo he feels like his soul just left his body. And he has to begrudgingly tell Izuku the real reason why he has bullied him, the real reason why Bakugo is the way that he is, and everybody else would hear it, and Bakugo's just embarrassed. Like, Deku didn't beat Bakugo. He mentally scarred him because now Bakugo has this whole thing out in the open, and without character development, this would make Bakugo very, very angry and make him want to like do bad things to Izuku, but he knows he can't, so he just kind of has to live with it and just deal with it. Bakugo ultimately tells everybody that the real reason he picks on Izuku is because he's always thought Izuku was better than him, and he doesn't like the fact that Izuku's better than him, so he wanted to make himself feel better by pushing him down at every chance that he could, and not let Izuku know that he's better than him. But that's really it. He just thought he was better than him, and he wanted to be on the same level, so he figured that if he picked on him and he pushed Deku down, then they'd be on equal footing. And so Izuku would smile and tell Bakugo that that's all he needed to hear, for letting him go and telling Bakugo that he always thought he was great too. He just always had that damned god complex, and if he only was to get rid of it, he'd probably be an awesome guy. He tells Bakugo he'll just let bygones be bygones, and that, by the way, nobody but me and you heard that. I made sure of it by using my genjutsu ability, so that everything that they heard through those intercoms wasn't anything that, you know, what we just said. You know what I mean? And Bakugo would be like, what do you mean? And Izuku would say, trust me, just know they won't hear anything. And from here, Bakugo and, you know, Ida would end up being defeated swiftly by Izuku and Mineta, who would just pretty much grab onto Deku's back and ride his coattails. But basically what would pretty much end up happening is that Izuku would make his way towards, you know, All Might's room at the end of everything, and All Might would ask Izuku who he thinks would be a worthy successor for One For All. Izuku would tell All Might that now the best option would probably be Mineta, and All Might and himself would have a huge laugh after that, as he would tell All Might not to worry about something like that, but for now, probably the best successor candidate is most likely going to be him, even though he really doesn't want the quirk. But he would tell All Might that whoever he does give it to, it should probably be somebody quirkless. There's already going to be enough people in UA with powerful quirks, and they're going to make a difference in their own way. Why not give another extra hero the chance to do something that, you know, somebody with a quirk is already going to do? You know, the chance to be somebody powerful, special, the chance to be number 2 hero. Izuku would say, and All Might would say, number 2? Izuku saying, yeah, that number 1 spot is reserved specially for me. All Might would laugh and would love the confidence that Izuku's exuding, and he would then go on to tell him that he has always thought Izuku was the best possible option. Izuku saying that that's way too much praise, and saying that, you know, he's just happy doing his job, you know what I mean? He wants to be a hero, and he just wants to put his best foot forward. And All Might would say that he's great for that. And so we would have a time skip to the day of the USJ attack. They'd be on the bus and they'd all be conversing, talking about who the most powerful one in the class is, when suddenly Suyu would say, I think it's Izuku. As everybody else would be like, I mean, Izuku's powerful, but look at Todoroki. He literally one-shotted his opponents. And they'd be like, yeah, Todoroki is pretty strong. But then, you know, Deku would be thinking, Todoroki? Seriously? Like, I could crush him with nothing but one finger. But ultimately, he wouldn't say nothing, and once they end up arriving at the USJ location, he's seeing inside of the USJ, seeing that there's like a bunch of villains in there. He would look towards Aizawa before letting him go inside and close the door using his ability, before telling Aizawa that inside of there is at least 100 villains. And if he was responsible for that, and if this was going to be some sort of test for the students, and Aizawa would say that there was not supposed to be anybody in there but not Recovery Girl, but 13. And Izuku says, well, then this is a villain attack. Go ahead and tell everybody to stay out here. Me, you, and 13 will handle it. And Aizawa would say, shouldn't we call for backup? And Izuku says, I am the backup. As he proceeds to pretty much make different versions of himself, like out of nowhere. Like obviously he would Actually, no. I'm not even gonna make him use different versions of himself. I want them to watch as Izuku single-handedly destroys everybody. I just really want to let this sink into the villains that there was absolutely nothing they could have done to stop Izuku, whether they liked it or not. So, yeah, Izuku is gonna absolutely destroy them. He would walk inside by himself, and Aizawa would tell him that he should wait for backup, but Izuku would say, nah, he's fine. And he would walk inside, and all of the villains would be watching as Izuku steps in there, and Izuku would say, Shinra Tensei. Before then, suddenly, a massive gust of just pushing energy. I'm not sure if I'm even using the right words. That might even be the name of another popular ability that Pain uses, but just know he's using the pushing ability that Pain used to destroy the village, but on a much smaller scale. So he gathered less chakra, and so it was not as potent. But ultimately ended up defeating all of the villains that were present, and the only one